Let me tell you something. What we're talking about today is real, it's important, and it deserves to be heard. Now, I know we've all heard that question. Why are some women in the USA refusing marriage and sex? It's a question that cuts deep. And there are reasons behind it that go way beyond just the surface level. Let's start with this. Society's changing. You can't deny it. We've all seen it, lived through it, and it ain't the same world it was 50, 60 years ago. Women's roles are evolving in a way we've never seen before. Today, women are not just sitting by the sidelines. They're in the boardrooms, in universities. They're leading businesses. They're changing the game. And guess what? The rules of the game have changed too. And when the rules change, people change the way they approach life. Women today are saying, I don't need a man to define who I am. I don't need a relationship to validate me. And that, my friends, is about empowerment. Women are stepping into their own power, and they're making choices based on what they want, not what society tells them they should want. Now, let's talk about independence. We're talking about financial independence, career independence. Women have control over their lives, and that control is allowing them to look at marriage in a different way. They're not marrying for financial stability anymore. They're not marrying out of necessity. They're choosing partners, if they choose them at all, on their terms. And I respect that. But it's more than just economics. It's about personal fulfillment. You see, some women are asking themselves, does marriage really serve my happiness? Does sex really define who I am? Or is there something more meaningful out there for me? And when you ask those questions, the answer is not always marriage. The answer is finding purpose. And let's not forget the trauma. We live in a world where some women have faced disappointment, heartache, and broken trust. Some women have been hurt by relationships, by society's unrealistic expectations, by men who couldn't see their worth. And when that happens, they may step back, say, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to heal, I'm going to focus on me. But here's the thing, this doesn't mean women are rejecting men or relationships altogether. What they're rejecting is a system that says you're less than if you're not married. They're rejecting a world that tells them their worth is tied to their sexual activity or marital status. They're rejecting expectations, and they're reclaiming control over their lives. So before you judge or criticize, understand this, they're not refusing love. They're refusing to settle. They're refusing to live according to someone else's script. They're writing their own story. And that's something we should all support. Over the past several decades, the role of women in society has experienced a seismic shift. From the days when women were largely confined to the roles of wife, mother, and homemaker, to today, where women occupy leadership positions across nearly every industry, the landscape has drastically changed. This transformation, fueled by waves of social, political, and economic movements, has led to a reevaluation of many traditional values, including those surrounding marriage and sex. At the heart of this shift is the undeniable fact that societal expectations for women have evolved. Not too long ago, women were often pressured to get married, have children, and play the role of a supportive spouse. For many, this was not just a personal decision, it was an expectation rooted in cultural and religious norms. Marriage was seen as a necessary step in life, and sex was largely confined within the boundaries of a heterosexual marriage, with an emphasis on procreation and traditional gender roles. However, as women gained access to education, employment, and legal rights, these societal expectations began to unravel. Women found themselves empowered to make choices about their own futures, choices that didn't necessarily align with the traditional trajectory of marriage and family. For instance, women's involvement in the workforce surged throughout the 20th century, leading to financial independence that made the prospect of marriage less urgent. With their newfound autonomy, women could now pursue careers, build their own wealth, and establish identities that were separate from the roles assigned to them by society. In parallel, women's education became a cornerstone of social change. The rise of women in higher education, alongside the feminist movements of the 1960s and 1970s, catalyzed a transformation in how women viewed their own potential. These movements not only pushed for equal opportunities, but also advocated for the right of women to control their own bodies and make decisions based on their personal desires rather than societal pressures. Women's voices were no longer passive, they became active agents in shaping their own lives and futures. This shift in social norms didn't happen in isolation, however. The civil rights movement, LGBTQ+ advocacy, and evolving views on gender identity all contributed to a broader reassessment of traditional structures. As women began to assert their rights to equality, autonomy, and freedom of choice, marriage and sexuality were placed under a microscope. More and more, people began to question why marriage in particular was such a central component of a woman's identity. The rise of individualism, coupled with greater access to birth control, sexual liberation, and changing gender dynamics, created a cultural climate where women felt empowered to make decisions outside the norm. Marriage and sex were no longer universally seen as the ultimate goal for women. Many women began to ask themselves whether the traditional path was the best or only path for them. They wanted the freedom to choose whether to marry, whom to marry, and when or if they would engage in sexual relationships. In sum, these changing social norms reflect a larger trend toward autonomy, self-determination, and equality. Women are no longer expected to conform to a single narrative. They are encouraged to chart their own paths. This transformation has played a significant role in the rise of women who are rethinking the traditional roles of marriage and sex, challenging the societal expectations of past generations, and embracing their right to make choices that are right for them. In recent years, one of the most transformative changes in society has been the increasing independence and empowerment of women. This shift is at the core of why many women are now rethinking traditional views on marriage and sex. No longer confined to the roles of wife and mother, many women in the United States have embraced self-sufficiency and autonomy, allowing them to make choices that align with their own personal goals, values, and desires. Historically, marriage was often seen as a woman's ultimate goal and means of securing her future. It was, for many, not just a personal choice, but a necessity for social and economic stability. A woman's worth was often defined by her relationship status, and sex was viewed as a key component within that framework. However, as women gained access to education and entered the workforce in larger numbers, this dynamic began to shift. Financial independence was one of the first major stepping stones to women's empowerment. For much of history, women were economically dependent on their husbands, fathers, or other male figures. This economic dependency kept women in traditional gender roles as marriage became not just an emotional commitment, but a financial arrangement. Women were often unable to pursue careers, develop their own wealth, or have the financial freedom to make choices that were truly their own. But over the course of the 20th and 21st centuries, women fought for equal access to education and the workforce, gaining the ability to earn their own income and achieve financial independence. This newfound financial security gave women the freedom to make decisions outside of societal expectations. With economic independence, women no longer felt obligated to marry simply for security or status. Instead, they began to view marriage not as a necessity, but as a personal choice. This empowered women to pursue relationships that were based on love, compatibility, and shared values. rather than on societal pressures or financial need. The ability to support themselves allowed many women to focus on their personal development and goals without feeling that they had to compromise their own ambitions to fit into traditional roles. The empowerment that came with independence was not just financial. It also extended to emotional and intellectual realms. Women, especially those who had access to higher education, began to view themselves as equals to men in all aspects of life. No longer did they see themselves as helpers or supporters. They began to see themselves as leaders, thinkers, creators, and innovators in their own right. This shift in self-perception allowed women to reimagine their lives outside the constraints of traditional roles. They could define their worth by their accomplishments, their passions, and their choices, rather than by whether or not they were married or sexually active. For many women today, independence means having the freedom to prioritize their careers, their personal growth, and their well-being. They can travel the world, pursue hobbies, and invest in their future without the expectation that they must conform to traditional marriage or relationship norms. Empowered by their choices, women are more likely to reject the idea that their fulfillment is tied to marriage or sex. They are rewriting the narrative to reflect their own desires and aspirations. In modern society, the economic landscape plays a crucial role in shaping the decisions and lifestyles of women, particularly when it comes to marriage and sex. For generations, women were largely dependent on men for financial stability, which meant that marriage often became not just a social or emotional arrangement, but a practical necessity. Women married in part because it provided them with financial security, as they had limited opportunities for economic independence outside the household. However, as women have gained access to education and the workforce, the economic pressures that once tied women to marriage have gradually diminished. Today, many women in the United States are choosing to delay or forego marriage entirely, and some are reevaluating traditional sexual norms, driven largely by their financial autonomy and shifting economic realities. The rise of women's participation in the workforce has been one of the most significant factors contributing to this change. Over the last century, women have fought for and gained access to a broader range of careers, higher wages, and opportunities for advancement. With the ability to earn their own income, women no longer view marriage as a financial necessity. In earlier generations, women often married to ensure a stable financial future, as it was difficult or even impossible to achieve financial independence on their own. Today, many women have careers that provide them with the means to support themselves and make their own choices, free from the economic pressures that once made marriage an essential step in life. Furthermore, women are delaying marriage and childbirth as they focus on their careers and personal development. The decision to marry is increasingly becoming a more deliberate one, made later in life, after a woman has had the opportunity to establish her career, pursue education, and reach financial independence. For many women, career success and financial security take precedence over the desire to marry or settle down. This shift in priorities allows women to control the timing and nature of their relationships, rather than feeling pressured to marry for financial reasons. In addition to income independence, the rising cost of living, especially housing, healthcare, and education, has made many women more cautious about entering into marriage. In many urban areas, the cost of raising children and owning a home has risen sharply, and the economic realities of modern life have made people question whether traditional marriage and family structures are practical for them. For some women, the financial burden of marriage, combined with the pressure to have children, is simply not appealing when they are focused on building their careers and pursuing other interests. Moreover, the concept of financial equality has become a driving force in the reevaluation of relationships. In an era where women are more likely to be the primary breadwinners in their households or earn comparable incomes to their male counterparts, the traditional financial role of a husband as the main provider is being challenged. This shift has created new opportunities for women to view marriage not as a financial arrangement, but as a partnership based on equality and mutual respect. The growing awareness of income inequality and the challenges that still exist in achieving true financial parity also plays a role in women's relationship choices. Many women, especially those who have fought for economic opportunity, are hesitant to settle for anything less than an equitable partnership, both emotionally and financially. This mindset is leading women to delay or reject marriage if they feel that it does not offer them the financial or personal fulfillment they desire. The concept of personal fulfillment has become a cornerstone of contemporary life, especially for women in the United States. Today, more women than ever are questioning traditional societal norms, including marriage and sex, in favor of pursuing their own paths to happiness, self-actualization, and well-being. Personal fulfillment, defined as achieving a sense of purpose, satisfaction, and happiness, is no longer seen as something that is contingent upon meeting external expectations, such as marriage, or fulfilling traditional gender roles. Instead, women are redefining what it means to live a fulfilling life, making choices that reflect their own desires, goals, and values, even if those choices don't align with the societal pressure to marry or engage in relationships based on conventional standards. For decades, society largely defined a woman's fulfillment in terms of her relationship status. Women were expected to find meaning and purpose through marriage and family life. Marriage was not just a union of two people, it was the hallmark of success and the ultimate goal. Having children, managing a household, and being a supportive partner were considered essential components of a woman's sense of self-worth. However, as societal norms have shifted, women have begun to ask themselves, is this the only way to feel fulfilled? The answer for many is no. Women today are increasingly seeking fulfillment in various aspects of their lives, through their careers, creative pursuits, education, travel, and social activism. They are realizing that their sense of happiness and accomplishment is not defined by being in a romantic relationship or by societal timelines that dictate when they should marry or have children. Instead, women are finding joy in personal growth, in following their passions, and in shaping a life that is uniquely their own. The rise of feminism and gender equality has played a significant role in this shift. Women are no longer being told that their primary purpose is to serve the needs of a husband or children. Instead, there is an increasing focus on women's autonomy and the importance of self-fulfillment. This shift is particularly significant because it allows women to explore who they are beyond the traditional roles that society has historically assigned to them. Women are no longer defined solely by their relationships. They are defined by their abilities, ambitions, talents, and dreams. The opportunity to achieve personal fulfillment through self-discovery and self-expression is empowering and has led many women to reevaluate the importance of traditional milestones like marriage. Another significant factor in this shift is the growing recognition that happiness is not one size fits all. What fulfills one person may not fulfill another. For some women, marriage and family may still hold great value, but for others, those institutions may not align with their personal desires. Women today are increasingly realizing that fulfillment comes from embracing their own unique paths, whether that includes traveling the world, advancing in their careers, or pursuing hobbies and personal interests that bring them joy. Many women are rejecting the idea that they need to be married or in a relationship to be happy, and are instead focused on living lives that are authentically their own. Furthermore, the concept of self-love and emotional well-being has become central to many women's lives. The idea that happiness should come from within rather than from external validation has gained traction. Women are prioritizing their mental and emotional health, understanding that fulfillment comes from within, not from societal approval or from the need to conform to outdated norms. As such, women are increasingly refusing to settle for relationships, marriages, or sexual encounters that do not contribute to their happiness and well-being. The decision of some women to refuse marriage and sex can often be traced back to past experiences of trauma, disappointment, and disillusionment. These experiences, whether they involve failed relationships, emotional scars, or the negative impact of societal pressures, have had a profound effect on women's attitudes toward intimacy and long-term commitment. In many cases, these past experiences lead women to reconsider traditional views on marriage and sex, as they question whether those societal expectations truly align with their emotional needs or personal well-being. For many women, the pain of past heartbreak or abusive relationships can create a deep sense of distrust or skepticism toward marriage and sexual intimacy. When a woman has experienced betrayal, infidelity, emotional abuse, or even physical violence in a relationship, it's understandable that she might choose to distance herself from the institution of marriage and the idea of romantic partnerships altogether. These negative experiences can leave lasting scars, making it difficult to see relationships as a source of joy or fulfillment. Instead, they may view relationships as something that involves pain, compromise, or loss of autonomy. In addition to the pain caused by individual experiences of betrayal or heartbreak, women may also be impacted by the pressure and expectations that society places on them regarding marriage and sexuality. For years, women were taught that their worth was tied to their ability to attract and retain a partner, or to conform to traditional ideals of femininity, marriage, and family. When women encounter these societal pressures in the form of unsolicited advice, judgment, or expectations from family members and peers, it can feel overwhelming. Over time, this pressure may lead women to reject the conventional norms surrounding marriage and sex altogether, particularly if they have experienced disappointment or disillusionment in those areas. For some women, the disappointment may stem from the false promises or idealized versions of marriage and relationships that were perpetuated by media and cultural narratives. Growing up, many women are bombarded with images of perfect marriages and happily ever after stories, which can create unrealistic expectations of what marriage and relationships should look like. When these expectations are not met in their own lives, whether through short-lived romances, divorce, or unfulfilled promises, it can lead to a deep sense of disappointment and, in some cases, emotional exhaustion. Over time, these negative experiences may make women more hesitant to embrace traditional relationship models or to see marriage as an ideal path for their future. Moreover, trauma is not always a result of direct relationship experiences. It can also be shaped by societal or cultural factors. For example, women who grow up in environments where toxic masculinity, gender-based violence, or rigid gender roles were normalized may internalize harmful beliefs about their worth or their place in relationships. Such experiences can create a deep-rooted fear of vulnerability, intimacy, or being emotionally dependent on another person. In these cases, the trauma women experience is not always personal, but is often linked to broader societal structures that have historically subordinated women and limited their agency in relationships. The trauma and disappointments women experience often serve as catalysts for rethinking their lives and relationships. Many women, recognizing the emotional weight of their past, are making conscious decisions to protect their mental and emotional well-being by rejecting relationships that don't offer the respect, trust, and fulfillment they deserve. They may opt for independence over commitment or choose to pursue personal growth and healing before considering marriage or intimacy again. In today's society, the decision of some women to refuse marriage and sex is not simply a rejection of tradition, but rather a reflection of a broader cultural shift toward independence, self-empowerment, and personal fulfillment. As social norms have evolved, women are increasingly prioritizing their autonomy, careers, and emotional well-being over the societal expectations that once dictated their paths. In today's society, the rise of women's financial independence has allowed many to break free from the economic pressures that once made marriage an essential part of life. Alongside this, personal fulfillment has become a central focus, with many women recognizing that happiness and self-actualization come from pursuing passions, building careers, and cultivating a life that aligns with their true desires. Moreover, the impact of past traumas, disappointments, and the unrealistic portrayals of relationships in media have led many women to reevaluate what marriage and intimacy truly mean. For some, the pain of broken relationships, societal pressures, or toxic expectations has created a deep sense of disillusionment, prompting a shift towards self-care and healing. This does not necessarily mean that these women are rejecting love altogether. Rather, they are choosing to approach relationships with greater intentionality, focusing on creating healthier and more fulfilling connections when they feel ready. Ultimately, the choice to refuse marriage and sex is a personal one, deeply influenced by a complex interplay of cultural, economic, and emotional factors. As women continue to break free from traditional roles and embrace their autonomy, they are creating new narratives about relationships and personal happiness. These choices are not about denying love or intimacy, but about empowering women to live lives that reflect their own values and aspirations, free from the constraints of outdated expectations. As society moves forward, we must respect and support these decisions, recognizing that true fulfillment comes from allowing individuals, especially women, to define their own paths and embrace the lives they choose to lead.